உள்ளதலதுள்ள உணர்வுள்ளதோ உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதான் உள்ளம் எனும் உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலவன் உள்ளத்தே உள்ளபடி உள்ளதே உள்ளலுணர்வாயே. Namo Ramana. We are commencing the journey into the pilgrimage into the meditation on Ulladu Narpadu. After completing the Ulladu Narpadu in one set of discussions and then taking up Anubandham and going through that, and as mentioned in the note to the first verse by Sri Lakshman Sharma in his commentary, he says that the Ulladu Narpadu Mangalam Shloka 1, the first Mangalam Shloka, is the essence of the whole text. It completely captures the essence of the whole text. So he says it is ideal if one can go through the whole text and after studying the text, come back and study the import of the Mangalam Shloka. So in one sense, since the Ulladu Narpadu also includes the Anubandham, that's what we are doing. And with Bhagavan's grace, we hope to go through the entire text after that. We began with having seen more wider look at God and world in Anubandham. We looked at the Ulla Unarvu that was presented or instructed by Bhagavan. How that Ulla Unarvu, that the world, God and individual, the sadhaka, that they exist, is revealed by the Ulla Unarvu, the existence consciousness, and that is present within the jiva. As the jiva holds the I am at the root of every thought, is taken to the Ulla Unarvu that reveals everything. So that reveals that which reveals the existence of the individual is the same light which reveals the existence of everything. Now, we spent some time in the last whole session on Ulla Unarvu so that there is a practical bent and a logical intuitive introduction of what we have learned in the journey that we have made in the last 2 years into what we are going to see this time around. So there will be a bit more of the practice that we'll be doing. We were doing 10 minutes of practice previously. So we can begin by making that 15 minutes towards the end before Akka summarizes the session and gives her points of view also. So we can, from 7:45 to 8, we can have the Atma Vicharam practice. Because slowly we understand that all inputs through this media can give us more interest and more fervor for practice, but it is in practice that the actual inner light is felt and abided in. Now, we begin the look into the how the work started, and then we go into the invocatory verse. Perhaps some part of invocatory verse we will be seeing this time, and the rest of it probably in the next session. Now, it is said in the preface to Ulladu Narpadu, both the Sivaprakasham Pillai's account and the account of Sri Lakshman Sharma and the account of Kanakamal, that how this whole work started is from the practice of Bhagavan to answer to the questions right from the year 1907, 1908, when he first gave the spoken instructions to Ganapati Muni. It appears that when someone would bring a scriptural text or bring a difficult question to be answered from the scriptures, Bhagavan would compose the answer in the form of poems. And there were many, many such poems. Bhagavan himself says. Now, the ability of Bhagavan to write poetry is something that we can briefly go into. There are two instances which reveal this, that what is the nature of poetry of Bhagavan. One instance is, of course, Ganapati Muni quite early on in the composition of Arunachala Pancharatnam. It appears there was a discussion between Bhagavan and Ganapati Muni on the difficulties of composing in the Venba meter. In Tamil, it appears the Venba meter is one of the toughest, if not the toughest, to compose in. The rules of prosody are like that. The rules of poetry are like that. And Bhagavan was suggesting that using the same rules, could Ganapati Muni compose some verses in Sanskrit itself. Then after a few attempts, Ganapati Muni, who is an Asukavi, who is a poet, who could compose poems as answers to questions extempore. Now he says that no, it's not possible to compose with those rules. And in almost a counter, Ganapati Muni himself asks to Bhagavan, says to Bhagavan that there is a similar meter structure in Sanskrit, it appears, that is called as the Arya meter. The Arya meter is supposed to be very tough for composing verses, and Ganapati Muni says that Bhagavan should compose some verses in Arya meter. And Bhagavan, of course, says that he doesn't know the rules of the Sanskrit prosody. So Ganapati Muni says he will explain, and he explains the rule. And Bhagavan goes inside and in a few minutes brings out I think it is the first two verses of the Arunachala Pancharatnam. Then he completes later, I think, the other three verses. But the verses are in Arya meter, and Karuna Purna Sudhabde Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya Arunachala Paramatman Arunobhava Chitta Kancha Suvikasaya Tvai Arunachala Sarvam Bhutva Stitva Pralinam. These are the two verses, I suppose. And Ganapati Muni says to his disciple who is standing nearby, all of his disciples, he has handed over to Bhagavan, saying to them that this is your Guru from now on. But they are still, Bhagavan doesn't ask them to leave that relationship, and they are still very respectful and related to Ganapati Muni as his disciples. He mentions to one of his disciples, can we ever compose verses like this? And one should keep in mind that Ganapati Muni himself is one of the top ranking, so to say, in modern words, the Sanskrit scholars and poets of those days. The other incident is, of course, one of the heroes of this work from the devotee's perspective, Muruganar Swamigal. Muruganar Swamigal comes across Bhagavan's writings in Arunachala Stuti Panchakam. It is Aksharamanamala, I think. And of course, the work Who Am I also is taken by Dandapani Swamigal, who is his father-in-law. Dandapani Swamigal is a devotee disciple of Bhagwan. His daughter is married to Muruganar Swamigal, and while going to Purasavakam or Chennai, Dandapani Swamigal has taken these two works of Bhagwan, and Muruganar Swamigal, just as Ganapati Muni was a great scholar in Sanskrit, Muruganar Swamigal had great scholarship in Tamil to such an extent that he was identified as one of the panel members for composing. I think there were 5 others or 4 others for composing the English Tamil dictionary or some dictionary from the people in charge of education at that time. That was his scholarship. And on seeing Arunachala Aksharamanamala, it is said that he says only God could have written such verses. So that is the poetry of Bhagwan, and there were many such poems. And Kanakamal and Lakshman Sharma both feel that Ulladu Narpadu and the other poems that were written, that were brought out from Bhagwan, are directly words from the Brahman, are directly words from the Supreme Self, are directly mantras from Ishvara's breath. This is their outright conviction that Ulladu Narpadu and other works of Bhagwan are mantras from the Ishvara's breath, seen and brought down by the Maharishi for us. It is said that many poems were written in that period from 1908 till 1922, because that's when Muruganar Swamigal comes into Ramanashram, I think 22 or 23. He comes to Bhagavan and visits Ramanashram and starts coming there regularly. And he takes interest in gathering all these old verses composed by Bhagavan. And he is able to gather about 21 of those verses. And now he is interested in making them into one teaching of Bhagavan. But he finds that many of them are composed at different points in time, addressing different questions. So he asks Bhagavan that in the style of the ancient Tamil literature, ancient Tamil poetry, where the spiritual and ethical teachings were composed as Inna Narpadu, Iniyavai Narpadu, Kalavu Narpadu, and all these were works pointing to ethics and spirituality from old scriptures, old Tamil literature. And Muruganar Swamigal suggests to Bhagavan that Bhagavan's teachings be composed, as Bhagavan is teaching about the self, about the Ulla Vastu, Ulla Porul, that Bhagavan's teachings can be composed together as Ulladu Narpadu, about 40 verses. And the initial idea is to add some 19 verses to the 21 existing so that they can be rearranged in form of a teaching. But as it is very difficult to persuade Bhagavan to write, says Kanakamal and Lakshman Sharma ji, that the one who is abiding in the self, who is already doing the highest that anyone can to the humanity and to oneself in one stroke, for him to be requested to come out of that just because we don't understand that language of Mauna, and to instruct us the Mauna as Dakshinamurti Swamigal did, and as Shankara, out of compassion, wrote down the Mauna Upadesham in the form of a verse, Dakshinamurti Stotram. Similarly, Bhagavan was asked to compose about that Maunam verses, and at the request of Muruganar Swamigal, with a great deal of pleading, Bhagavan starts writing the Ulladu Narpadu verses, and they find that the earlier verses are almost completely disjointed, and a total of 40 verses and a Mangala Shloka are written and compiled together as Ulladu Narpadu. And the 21 verses which were earlier there are almost kept aside as additional for the moment. And this work of 40 verses and one Mangala Shloka, the first Mangala Shloka, they are shown to Ganapati Muni. And Ganapati Muni finds that that while there is upasana, there is worship of the Nirguna, the Nirguna Satta, the Saguna Upasana is not there, especially in the Mangala Shloka. Any work according to him should start with the Upasana of the Saguna. And he finds that one of the verses has Ishvara in it. This Marana Bhaya Mikkulavam Makkalaranaha Marana Bhavamilla Maheshan. The word Maheshan is Maheshwara. So he finds that verse is an invocation of the Saguna, and he suggests that that verse also can be included in the invocatory verses, the Mangala Shlokas. And Muruganar and Bhagavan, they find that if the first verse is on the holding of the thought-free state through direct inquiry, then it cannot be different from the Atma Samarpanam. Self-inquiry cannot take place or cannot be completed without the offering of the self, offering of the ego to the Supreme. So they find that both mean the same, and that is the second one is the actual Marana experience of Bhagavan. The Marana Bhaya Mikkula, the extreme fear of death which drives the mind inward to the self, that is what happens to Bhagavan in his enlightenment experience in Madurai home. So they include that verse, and to complete the 40 verses in the body of the work, because it is Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan composes Tannai Adithu Ezhunda Tanmayanandarukku Ennai Uladondru Iyatrudarkku Tannayalal Anniyam Ondrum Mariyar Our Nilamai Innadenrunnal 11. And that is included as verse number 31. And the 40 are completed. Of course, the 21 in Ulladu, the Narpadu Anubandham, those verses which were earlier composed and found to be extra now, they are joined together as 21. Then over a period of, this is finished in 1928 and published in 1931 with the 21 additional verses. Then over a period of 10 to 12 years with various additions, the Anubandham also becomes one Mangala Shloka and 40 verses. So the present structure of 2 Mangala Shlokas and 40 verses in Ulladu Narpadu and 1 Mangala Shloka and 40 verses in Anubandham, we find to have taken place somewhere in the year 1945 or 47, and from there it has continued. Now coming to one of the works we are going to rely on. One of the works is going to be Sivaprakasham Pillai's notes. What I'll be sending a PDF copy in our group. You can go through that. Now, what Sivaprakasham Pillai has done, something very beautifully he has done. Now, he has condensed the same verses without expanding on them, without commenting on them, but by giving some clues. But by giving some clues as to why the action points in those verses are what they are. And he has written a small note in the beginning of his work, or commenting on Ulladu Narpadu, And then he goes to write the whole summary. But that interesting part in that condensation is that each of the small notes that he has written on each of the verses, now it goes back and gives a small philosophical angle or a touch or a practical truth as to why that action point or why that particular point has been mentioned by Bhagwan, and that makes it simply wonderful. So that I am including in the group, so that we'll be relying on. But more importantly, we'll be relying on the commentary of Sri Lakshman Sharma. So a bit on that, you can do a better job on the text about. He says, no, I don't even know Tamil, and the prosody involved here is Venba meter, and it is very tough to know the inner meanings. Bhagavan says, why do you worry about that? I will tell you, I will teach you the nuances of Tamil prosody involved. You start, you feel, isn't it? You feel that you can do a better work. You start doing, and for a period of 4 years, the method they adopt is that Lakshman Sharma ji should study the Tamil work. Of course, Bhagavan would have taught the nuances. Then he has to compose that in Sanskrit, and he has to come and show it to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan will say, you have to relook at it. And again, some adjustment has to be made. Again, he has to recompose the Sanskrit verse till it is accepted as perfect by Bhagavan. And Bhagavan himself says this process took 3 to 4 years. And that was his tapas. Bhagavan says that was the penance of Lakshman Sharma, and it appears he would keep the commentary on his the library rack, and whenever someone would ask some clarification on any of the verses, he would take that book out and refer and tell, indicating that is a book we can refer for our own sake. That when Bhagavan has taken it once and read to clarify somebody's doubt, he has indicated to us that book is something we can rely on as a true commentary on his work. And in the introductory part, the publisher's note, we find that the publisher has relied on the last verse of the Kalivenba. The last verse of Kalivenba is Ulladu Narpadu Ondru Kalivenbavam Ulladu Kaatum Uli. So in the Kalivenba, Bhagavan completes the Ulladu Narpadu as, what is this Ulladu Narpadu text? The Ulladu Narpadu text is the light that reveals the Ullavastu. Is the light that reveals the Ullavastu. And the publisher's note says, the commentary of Lakshman Sharma is also the light that reveals this light, because it makes us focus our attention on the text of Ulladu Narpadu. By revealing its meaning, it is helping us focus our attention on the text. So it is the light that reveals the light that reveals the self. That is how the publisher's note goes. We should be able to go through the commentaries of Ulladu Narpadu from Sivaprakasham Pillai by Lakshman Sharma ji and Kanakammal. And if there are some contributions or doubts that can come from the group, you can always post it in the group and we can take it forward from there. So we begin with the first verse, the invocatory verse today. Ulladala Ulla Unarvu Ullado. That is one phrase, one set of, one statement, one affirmation. Ulladala Ulla Unarvu Ullado. Can there be an awareness of existence as I am, apart from that which is? That is the first statement or first affirmation. Can there be an awareness of existence apart from that which is உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதால் is the second statement. உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதால். உள்ள பொருள் is sadvastu. That sadvastu, how it is? Ullalara, completely free of all thoughts. And for our practicality sake, let us take that all thoughts means I thought and all other thoughts. Just you will see why I am doing that as we go to the next part. That let us look at thoughts as we have seen, all other thoughts exist depending on the I thought. All other thoughts arise after the arising of the I thought. All other thoughts subside on the subsidence of the I thought. Therefore, I am looking at the contents of the consciousness as I thought and other thoughts. We will see why I am doing that. Ulladu, ulladala, ullavunar, ullado. That is the first one. The second sentence or affirmation is ulla porul, the sadvastu, ullalara, free of all thoughts, the I thought and the dependent other thoughts. Ullatte ulladal, exists in the heart. The ullapurul, the sadvastu, exists in the heart, sans all thoughts, free of all thoughts, purged of all thoughts. Ullamenum, ullapurul, ullalevan, ullatte, ullapadi, ullade, ullal, unarvaye. Ullamenum, ullapurul, ullalevan. Now that sentence means, now the heart was mentioned as the place where the thought-free consciousness or the ullapurul exists. In this part it is mentioned ullamenum. The same self is called as heart itself. It is not only the seat, it is also the name given to the ullapurul. Ullamenum, ullapurul, ullalevan. Now, who or how to meditate on the ullapurul, which is free of thoughts. Now, who means I thought. How means the method or a technique or a set of thoughts with which you are going to reach the thought-free state. So, ullamenum, ullapurul, ullalevan, that thought-free consciousness, who can meditate and how to meditate. Because the thought-free consciousness is free of the I thought and the other thoughts. Only the I thought is called as who. The other thoughts may be combined as some path, as a method. But Bhagavan is removing both. That you can't use a method to meditate or invoke the ullapurul, and you can't retain your ego and meditate or invoke the ullapurul. Both have to go. Ullamenum, ullapurul, ullalevan, ullatte, ullapadi, ullade, ullal. How to actually meditate then? If those two are removed, if the ego has to go, the meditator has to go, and the paths used for meditation has to go, then what it means actually to meditate on the ullapurul? To be thought-free as the ullapurul is, as the self is, in the heart. Ullatte, ullapadi, ullade, ullal. To be oneself identified with the thought-free consciousness, with the ullapurul, and abide as the ullapurul is to meditate on it. To put this together and look why this verse is like this. To put it together first, can there be an awareness of existence apart from that which actually exists? That which actually exists in the heart completely free of all thoughts. Hence, who or how to meditate or invoke that which is completely free of all thoughts, to be completely free of all thoughts and abide as that Ullapurul, as that self, is to meditate on it. This is the meaning of the verse, paraphrasing of the verse. The meaning, of course, is abiding in the heart, but this is the paraphrasing of the verse. Now we go to why this has been composed like this, that the Ullamenum, Ullapurul, Ullalavan, Ullatte, Ullapadi, Ullade, Ullal. Now, why Bhagavan has composed it in this form is that Sadhuvan Swamigal writes that the second and the last two lines were the first composed. On he writes the date also, that Ullapurul, Ullalavan, Ullatte, Ullapadi, Ullade, Ullal, Unar. Those two lines are first written, and as an explanation to these two lines, the first two lines have been added. So actually, the first composed part is the meditation part, that what has to be discarded in meditation and what has to be done in meditation is the part that is there. Now, why at all this meditatory or invocatory verse in the beginning is that in any scriptural work, it is right to invoke the deity, invoke the God whom the work is about. Now, we find that this work of Bhagavan is on the self, is on Ullapurul, that which is Ekam, that which is Advitiyam, that is Swayam Prakasham, Atma. It is about that. So the invocatory verse is also about that. That is all. How to invoke? Whenever we do a puja, we avahanam, we invoke the deity. When we chant the Vishnu Sahasranamam, there is a dhyana shloka. We meditate on Vishnu so that he can be present during our chanting. The chanting can be offered to him. There is a dhyanam. That is what the invocatory verse, the dhyana shloka, is about. How to invoke the deity about which the work is? The work is about Ullapurul, the self, that which is. Now, how to invoke that? Can you invoke it with a thought? Because the Ullapurul is existing completely free of all thoughts. Can you retain your ego and invoke the Ullapurul? Bhagavan says no. To invoke, to bring it here, to request to come here is not to bring it from somewhere, because it is already Ullapurul. We have to remove the falsities. We have to remove that which is not. That's all. To invoke that which is, all one has to do is jettison that which is false. To invoke the truth, let go of the false. What is the false appearance? The mind, the other thoughts, and the I thought, they are the appearances to be dropped. Then automatically the Ullapurul is there. It is not to be invoked. It reveals itself in that place where the I thought and other thoughts have been thrown overboard. When the ahamkara and mamakara are completely dropped, the Atma rises and shines. When the false existences of the world, the Jiva and the Ishvara, the Triputi, the triad, is removed, then automatically that which is the Adhara for all these three rises and shines. This is why this shloka has been placed here as invocation. To how to invoke the deity whom we are going to worship, by practice of Atma Vicharam suggested later, to invoke that deity, to bring him here, to do avahana. Please come. please accept our offering as discussions, as meditations on Ulladu Narpadu. How to do that? To get rid of all thoughts and to get rid of the I thought, then the Ullapurul is here. Ullapurul reveals itself. That is the meaning or purpose behind placing this verse first. And Lakshman Sharma gives us a beautiful addendum, wonderful addendum to this. He says that Bhagavan is always abiding in the self. Ramana, the Nama, is always abiding in the self in Sahaja Samadhi. Therefore, to carry out the teachings of Ulladu Narpadu or to meditate on the work is to invoke the presence of Ramana Maharishi. So, he does not feel that the Saguna Upasana is not there here. How he beautifully brings that is, says that Bhagavan is completely immersed in the self. The Ramana Shakti is completely immersed in the self in Sahaja Sthiti, naturally. Therefore, anyone who is practicing self-inquiry or anybody who is meditating on any verse of Ulladu Narpadu is directly invoking the presence of Ramana Shakti. So, that Ramana Shakti is also with us naturally when we chant Ulladu Narpadu, when we do Atmavicharam, and when we jettison the thoughts, all the thoughts, the other thoughts and the I thought. That is how he ends the introduction to that verse. That when we are going for the first invocatory verse, we are invoking not only the Ullapurul, but we are invoking the Ramana Shakti also together with that. Now, how he arranges the first verse is that the first sentence, that Ulladala, Ullavunar, Ullado, then Ullapurul, Ullalara, Ullatte, Ulladal, Ullamenum, Ullapurul, Ullalevan. That is one sentence. Ullatte, Ullapadi, Ullade, Ullal. These are three affirmations of which the whole verse is composed. To put it simply, can there be an awareness of existence apart from that which is? As that which is exists in the heart, sans thoughts, how to or who is to meditate on that? And the last sentence is to abide as the Ullapurul, to abide as the self, sans thoughts in the heart, is to meditate or invoke or bring or request the Ullapurul to come here. Those are the three segments. But the first segment, Ulladala, Ullavunar, Ullado, he says has two imports, two meanings. Can there be an Ullavunar apart from that which is, has two meanings? Therefore, we should consider this verse has four parts. The two meanings of the first part, then the second part which asks, as the Ullapurul exists without thoughts, who or how to meditate on that? And the last part which says actually how to meditate. That is to be as the Ullapurul is, completely free of thoughts in the heart, is to invoke that, is to bring that here, is to request that to come and be seated, is to meditate on that, says Bhagavan in the verse. So we go to the first part. The first part is Ulladala, Ullavunarvu, Ullado. I would like to recall the last discussion we had on Ullavunarvu because we had touched upon the practicality of it. The practicality of it being that Ullavunarvu, which is Adhara for everything, revealing the false world or revealing the self. We are going to see that next in the second import of the verse. In the practicality of it, that Ullavunarvu has to be experienced inside us. As we trace the I am, whenever a thought arises, we have to inquire. There is something that reveals that thought, the existence of the thought. There is something that reveals the existence of my I thought. But only after my I thought arises, there is awareness of the other thought. Therefore, the awareness of the other thought arises after my own arising. Therefore, we ask, for whom is this thought? For me. Who am I? Brings us to that awareness which reveals the I and the other. So that is the practicality we brought. And we saw that when three of us had different thoughts, that all those thoughts vanished when we asked, for whom is this thought? And when we felt that there were three of us, when I feel that there are, let us say, about 20 of us here, now the pursuit of who am I there? Who feels that there are 20 people? That takes me to the Ulla Unarvu in each one of us without difference. In that Ulla Unarvu, there is no difference. So all the 20 existences are now having the substrate of the Ulla Unarvu in me. So in each one of you, Bhagavan says, at that point, don't say there are 20 other people who are meditating with me, but continue your Ulla Unarvu. Who says that there are 20 people? Who says that there are 6 billion people in this world? Who says that there are so many worlds? All those existences arise after the Ulla Unarvu arises from inside you. So by holding the Ulla Unarvu inside us, we go to the existence consciousness of Sarvam, of everything. It is that Ulla Unarvu, that awareness of existence, Bhagavan is asking, can it be apart from something that which exists? So the first import of this statement is that there cannot be that the Ulla Unarvu, awareness of existence, can arise or can exist only in the substrate of that which exists. He explains, Bhagavan explains, that in the waking state, we all see a world and we also see ourselves as the perceiver of the world. We see ourselves as the perceiver of the world and we see the world of objects and we take both to be real. Now, the test of reality Bhagavan gives is that the test of reality of anything is that it should be continuous in its existence. Continuity of existence gives reality. That's why practically also in our Vyavahara, when somebody lives up to 100, when a marriage goes up to 80 years, or when somebody's sadhana is continuously there for 30-40 years, we respect that continuity in sadhana, ajyadaraya srotasasamam sarala chintanam. The continuity is the test for reality. So the continuity of existence is the test for reality, Bhagavan says. And does this continue? Does the world and the perceiver of the world continue? Not even for one day's cycle. In the waking state, they are there and they are intermittently there. And in the dream state, they become totally different. There is a different mind there in the dream, and it creates its own loka, its own set of circumstances, and feels trapped in that. And in deep sleep, both these vanish. Both the perceiver perceived of the waking and the perceiver perceived of the dream, they vanish in deep sleep, in Garda Nidra. Therefore, this experience of the individual and the world, which then thinks of a God in charge of the three, that is unreal because it vanishes in deep sleep. Therefore, this unreal triad of Jagat, Jiva and Ishvara must have a substrate, which is the Ulla Purul, says Bhagavan. So the first import of Ulladala, Ulla Unar, Ullado is an affirmation by the Jnani is an affirmation by the Rishi. Don't worry, this Ulla Porulgal of the world and the Jiva are false appearances, but that is not all. Yeah, you are not trapped in the false appearance. It is merely the snake that is appearing in the rope. There is a substrate. So the jnani who experiences reality says that these false appearances which keep changing and which are not present in deep sleep have the Ullapurul as their substrate. There is an Ullapurul which is the rope, and we will see how that Ullapurul is to be held or is to be invoked as we go into the meaning of this verse. We are just beginning to explore the meaning of the first statement. It is an affirmation. It is it is the root of theism that there is a supreme being, there is a God, but what is the nature of that God? What is will be inquired into, not directly inquiring into the world or into the God, but inquiring into who the perceiver is. But that's for much later. Right now, the first import of the first sentence, Ulladala, Ulla Unarvu, Ullado, it means the affirmation from the Rishi that don't worry, these changing experiences of world and perceiver, of waking state, dream and deep sleep, all exist only based on something else, that is the substrate. What is the substrate? How it is revealed? That is the second import of the first statement. We'll take that up in our next meeting. We will sit for Atma Ucharam for 15 minutes. So just to remind the practice is that the heart is the thought-free state. So when other thoughts arise, we should understand the first person ego is remaining hidden. So don't pursue the thought that has arisen, but inquire for whom has this thought arisen. The Ulla Unarvu of yourself will arise. It is for me. I exist. It is for me. Then trace that source of that Ulla Unarvu. Who am I? You take your own existence to its adhara, to the rope. You yourself, by identifying with the body and mind, we are the snake. But when we ask for our source, we find the rope that is connecting all, that is all. So with Bhagavan's immense grace, let us sit in Atma Uchara.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. In this Ulla Unarvu, what we had as faith in God, Bhagavan literally takes us by hand and makes us hold God. The light that reveals everything, the other and the I. We have had faith and we have built that with Bhagavan's grace, and now that is now maturing by Bhagavan's grace into holding God directly, the Ulla Unarvu, and asking whether that Ulla Unarvu can be apart from Ulla Porul. The Ulla Unarvu has energy, it is Shakti, and whenever Shakti is treated as apart from Shivam, we find samsara. Whenever Chit is separated from Sat, we find samsara. When Chit is attending to the Sat, that is beyond samsara, that is the reality. And Bhagavan says that energy, the Shakti, has also got to be absorbed in the self by continuing the enquiry. For whom is this Purana? And this Purana quietens down into Shivam. So literally from faith in God, Bhagavan makes us hold God and merge into that source of everything, the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.